This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
This is episode number 400 of the Debt Free in 30 podcast, and as is my custom, whenever I hit a round number of podcasts, I like to do a solo episode. No guests, just me giving my thoughts. Today, I have many thoughts on employment, a job, and specifically how to protect yourself from job loss. Why do I want to talk about losing a job? Well, first, I'm a licensed insolvency trustee, and whenever anyone comes to see me to file a consumer proposal or bankruptcy, I ask them what happened, and the most common answer I get is something to do with employment or lack thereof. They lost their job, or their hours got cut back, or they started a business and it failed. There are other reasons people go bankrupt, like a divorce or a serious medical problem, but job loss or a reduction in income for any reason is the most common reason people get into financial trouble. My clients go bankrupt because of debt, but in most cases, it's not a debt problem, it's an income problem. A good job is critical to financial success. The second reason I want to talk about jobs is that based on my experience, I have many ideas on how you can protect yourself from job loss. There's a lot you can do to protect yourself, and I'll share those strategies today. For those of you new to the channel, I've spent the last 35 years in the financial world. I've got a commerce and economics specialist degree. I'm a chartered accountant, a CPA, a chartered business valuator, and a licensed insolvency trustee. I've personally met with 10,000 clients. I just made that number up. I've never counted. It's probably closer to 20,000. And I see people making the same mistakes over and over. So today, I'll take what I've learned in my 35 years as a professional money guy, and I'll give you a lot of practical advice on how to keep your income flowing. I have 3 basic thoughts, and then I'll end with practical advice. My thoughts are basic truths, so let's get to it. Truth number 1, no job is secure. I don't know if you follow the news or not, but in 2020, there was a worldwide lockdown, and in Canada, it was still going in 2021 and 2022. A lot of people who thought they had secure jobs got hit by the pandemic lockdowns, and the effects will likely be felt for many years to come. Truth number 2, you are only worth what someone will pay you. You disagree with that point, don't you? I get it. You think you deserve a raise. You should be earning more. Pretty much every employee thinks that. I was the same. Back in the early 1990s, I worked in the corporate insolvency group at KPMG, the big accounting firm. I had a good boss. I learned a lot from him. And every year I met with my boss for a performance review, and I'd make the case that I deserved a big raise. One thing accounting firms are good at is accounting. Everything is numbers. I charged my hours to every client file I worked on, so at the end of the year, I could add up my chargeable hours and multiply by my hourly charge-out rate, and I could easily compute how much revenue I generated for the firm. So I'd say to my boss, "Hey boss, look how much money I made for the firm. You should be paying me more. I know the firm needs to make a profit, but I'm doing all the work, so I should be getting paid at least half of what I'm generating. That seems fair." Of course, my boss had a different perspective. My boss was a partner in the firm, but he didn't control the firm, so he couldn't pay me whatever he wanted because the firm had salary grids, so there was only so much I could get paid. And as my boss pointed out, I didn't generate the revenue. I didn't go out and find the clients. They were all clients of the firm. I just did the work. And although it hurt my ego to admit it, I was not unique. I was good at my job, but there were a lot of other people who could do my job. And guess what? When I left that job to go to another firm, someone else took over my files and someone else did my job and the firm didn't close down. It's still around today. I thought I was worth more, and I did leave that job in 97 to go work for PwC, and I got a raise, so I guess I was worth more than what I was being paid, but I had to pack up and leave and go somewhere else to get paid more. I was with PwC for less than 2 years and wasn't happy with what I was getting paid, and there was no chance for advancement, so I left. And in January of 1999, Ted and I started Hoyes Bikeless, and we're still here today, but that's not my point. My point is that when I was working at KPMG, I was getting paid what I was worth. And when I went to another job, again, I was getting paid what I was worth, whether or not I believed it. I was free to move, and I did, but I was getting paid whatever I was worth wherever I was. That's how it works. Truth number 3, there is no loyalty. I'm exaggerating a bit on this one. I'm an employer and I am loyal to my employees. I do my best to provide good pay. We're a living wage employer, and I do my best to provide good working conditions. I've got employees who've been with me for many years, which shows that they are also loyal. But when the pandemic hit and the number of people going bankrupt dropped to 30-year lows and stayed low for over 2 years, for the first time in our 24-year history, we had to lay people off. I had never had to lay people off due to lack of work, but when your work drops almost in half, you don't need as many people. That's how it is. The harsh truth is that the business must survive or else everyone loses their job, and sometimes that means laying off some employees to save the rest. That means laying off even good employees. And of course, it goes both ways. If an employee finds a better job with better working conditions or better pay, guess what? They leave. I did it when I was an employee, twice. And that's how it should work. An employee should not be forced to stay at the same job forever. They should be loyal, but ultimately your primary loyalty should be to yourself and your family, not to your employer. That's the way it is. Okay, enough of the truth telling. Let's get to practical advice. I've got a list of 5 things you can do right now to increase your chances of staying employed at a good job. My first piece of advice: hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Hope for the best means assume that your employer will do well and you'll be there for many more years to come. I'll say more on that later. Plan for the worst means be prepared if you get fired tomorrow. Most people who I've met over the years who got fired didn't expect it. They thought everything was going great. So here's the question for you. If you got fired tomorrow, what would you do? Here's a better question. If you know you will get fired next month, what would you do today? I know what I would do. I've got a 4-point plan for getting hired. First, I'd have my resume ready and up to date. I think at least once every few months you should pull out your resume, dust it off, and update it. If you worked on a big project at work or gained some new skills or took a course, put it on your resume. Knowing what you have accomplished recently will help in your salary negotiations at your current job, but it will also help you find the new job. Second, have your resume stored on your home computer, not your work computer, because if you get walked out the door, you won't have time to back up your stuff. So if you have any personal information stored on your work computer, like your resume, store it at home or in the cloud so you can access it later. Third, decide now where you will look for a new job. Think about it. If you get fired today, what's the first phone call you'll make? What's the first email you'll send? If I was a truck driver and my employer lost a big contract and let me go, I'd immediately start calling other companies that need a truck driver. Trucking companies, logistics companies, companies with their own fleet of trucks, whatever. The point is that you should make that list now so that you can immediately start calling if you need to do. You don't want to waste a week researching your alternatives. You want to hit the ground running, particularly if a bunch of other employees at your company got laid off at the same time, and they're all going to be making that same phone call to that same prospective employer. You want to be the first. And I mean a real list, names, phone numbers, email addresses, whatever. You should be ready to start immediately on your job search. Which brings me to point 4. Always be looking and always be networking. I guess that's 2 points, but it's really the same concept. How do you network? Well, find out where employers in your industry hang out and go there. Join an industry association, join a committee, go to their events, meet people. You never know where your next job will come from, but the more people you know, the greater your chances of finding that next job. Don't just go to industry events to find another job. Go to meet people, learn new things, and keep up to date with what's happening. All of those things make you more employable. So that's my 4-point plan for planning for the worst to get hired if you lose your job. Keep your resume up to date. Have your resume and other important information on your home computer, not your work computer. Decide now where you will look for a new job and make a list, and always be looking, always be networking. Let's continue with more practical advice. I said, plan for the best, but prepare for the worst. Next piece of advice, build your skills. Scott Adams calls it building your talent stack. Let's say you want to get a job as an accountant at a big firm. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but let's say that's what you want to do. Obviously, you need to be an accountant and have the appropriate designation like a CPA, but everyone applying for that job will be a CPA. What sets you apart? Your talent stack. Look at me. I'm an accountant, but I can also do other stuff, like host a podcast and appear in videos on YouTube. And I have some marketing skills. I write all of my radio commercials. I wrote a book. You should buy it. It's still available on Amazon and Kindle. So if you were an employer and you had to hire a senior accountant, would you hire the person who was just an accountant, or would you hire the person who was an accountant but Good. Also speak and give presentations and talk to clients and write and do marketing. The more things you can do, the better. Can you write computer code? Great. Do you know how to write database queries? Are you a master of pivot tables in Excel? All good, and those extra skills set you apart from the competition. Also, it makes life more fun, so the more you can do, the better. Start now. What extra skills can you acquire that would be fun for you but would also be valuable to an employer? Make a list and start acquiring those skills. You've got time now. You're either watching this video while you have a job, so take a few hours each week, early in the morning before work or in the evening, shut the TV off, turn off social media, and devote an hour 3 times a week to improving your skills. And if you're currently unemployed, well, you got even more time, so make yourself more valuable. Start now. Which brings me to my third piece of practical advice. Reinvent yourself. If you got hired to be a junior accountant at the big accounting firm, the person who hired you will think of you as a junior accountant. You'll be assigned projects appropriate for a junior accountant, and you'll get paid like a junior accountant. Unless you build your skills, you won't progress. That's fine. Everyone doesn't want to be a senior accountant, but if you want to advance, you have to reinvent yourself. For example, if you have an accounting background, but you also learn to code or understand marketing or build your profile as an industry expert, you can advance. What is accounting? Well, it's numbers, but it's numbers that are generated for the purpose of making a decision. Are we profitable? What clients are most profitable? Why are those clients profitable? How can we find more of them? The answer to those questions starts with numbers. What numbers? Well, that's what you have to figure out. Your accounting system will have sales numbers and costs, but you also need to look at your company's CRM system that shows all of your sales pitches, including the ones that didn't work. You need to analyze customers by size and perhaps by geography and perhaps by what product or service they buy. All of that information is probably not in your conventional accounting system, so you'll need to figure out how to pull data from the marketing system and perhaps from places like Google Analytics to see how your website's performing, or viewer stats on YouTube, or data on the weather if that impacts your business. You got to think and pull all of those pieces together to come up with an answer. This is important in many jobs, not just accounting. Are you in sales? Well, where do your leads come from? Which are the best performing segments? You got some work to do to figure that out, but if you can, your income should increase and the boss will be happy. It takes work, but if you can figure out, you've reinvented yourself. You're also not just an accountant or just a salesperson, but someone who understands many aspects of the business, and that makes you more valuable. Hey, thanks for the pep talk. I lost my job and now I'm surviving by driving for Uber. Not a whole lot of analytics there, smart guy. I disagree. If you're doing Uber Eats, what times of day are busiest? What days of the week? Does weather matter? Do more people order in when it's raining? If so, you want to check the weather and make sure you're working on rainy days. Which restaurants have the most deliveries? Hang out near them. Go talk to the manager. They probably get lots of direct calls, not through Uber Eats, so perhaps you can deliver directly for them. Cut out the middleman. You drive for Uber? Same analysis. It may be that the most profitable runs are the airport runs at 6 a.m., so get up early, hang out where people are that need a drive to the airport, and do that. Reinventing yourself means not just doing your job, but figuring out what makes the company tick and doing more of that. Now, on to advice point number 4, have a good attitude. I'm an employer. Let's say I've got 2 employees and both are equally technically competent, and I can only promote one of them or I have to lay one of them off. Which one has the advantage? Well, the one with the good attitude. You know what I like as a boss? When one of my employees says, hey, I've got some extra time this week, what do you need me to do? They could just pretend to be busy, and it may take me a while to notice that they aren't that busy, but if they ask for work, that's showing a good attitude. Let's face it, at some point, your boss is going to ask you to do something you didn't really want to do. It may be talking to that difficult customer or putting you on a team with someone you don't get along with. That's life. If you have a good attitude, you'll go far. I'm not saying just roll over and do whatever crappy job you get assigned. You can speak up for yourself, but having a smile on your face does wonders. The opposite is also true. If when asked to do something, you say, oh, okay, that's not a good attitude. And now for my final piece of advice, take pride in your work. I guess having a good attitude and taking pride in your work are very similar. If you have a good attitude, it will lead to having pride in your work. When I was 16, I had a job in the local hardware store. I talked about it in the preface to my book. You should read it. Straight Talk on Your Money. available on Amazon and Kindle. One of my jobs was to mop the floor at the end of the day. I had never mopped a floor before. I didn't know how to use one of those big industrial mops or mop buckets, but my boss showed me and I practiced and I got pretty good at it. On Saturdays, the store closed at 6 p.m., so around 5:30 or so, I'd get the broom out and sweep the floor to get rid of the dust and the dirt. Then about 15 minutes before closing, I'd load up the water and cleaning solution in the bucket, and I'd start mopping at the far end of the store away from the customers. Then as the store closed, I'd work my way towards the front door and be done soon after closing. I was pretty good at it. And you may think, well, that's great, but that's an unimportant and menial job, so who cares? Well, first, it's not an unimportant job. If I did it wrong and put too much water on the floor and did it too early so the floor was wet when customers were walking on it, a customer could slip and fall and we get sued, so it's important to do it right. And second, I cared. That's why I wanted to do a good job. I started at that job knowing nothing. After a few months, a customer would come in with a wood screw and want more of the same, and I'd look at it and say, oh, sure, that's a number 10 Robertson. Follow me. I got lots of them back there. This was an old-fashioned hardware store. I made keys. I cut glass for window repairs. I worked the cash. I stocked the shelves. It took a while, but I developed a talent stack. I could do many things, which made me valuable to my employer, but it also gave me a lot of pride in my work. I could do stuff. Now, I knew when I was 16 that I wasn't going to work in a hardware store forever. It wasn't my calling or my destiny. I knew I would finish high school, go to university, and become an accountant working for a big accounting firm. I didn't know that 19 years after I learned to mop a floor, I would start Hoy's Michaelis, and I didn't know that 42 years after mopping the floor at the hardware store, I'd be sitting here in my fancy podcast studio recording episode number 400 of the Debt-Free in 30 podcast, but here I am. And I'm here because every job I had, even if it was just mopping the floor, was a job I took pride in. So to conclude, if you're happy with your current job, great. Be aware that you likely won't be working at the same job for the same boss 42 years from now or even 5 years from now. All good things must end, and endings usually are not fun. So keep working hard and prepare for the next adventure, whatever that may be. If you're currently unemployed, build your skill set while you're looking for the next gig. In whatever job you get next, even if it isn't your dream job, take pride in it. And if you're currently working in a job that you don't like or that's okay but isn't your dream job, make a plan now for the next adventure in your working life. Ask yourself what you really want in a job. Is it just, I want to make a lot of money? Well, that's great, but are you willing to move to another city to do it? Are you willing to have a long commute every day just to make a few dollars more? Or are working conditions just as important as money? Once you figure that out, start looking, but don't just look for a similar job at another company. You can reinvent yourself, so you may find a job in a totally different area. It's up to you. So my advice is simple. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Loyalty is a two-way street, so you decide what level of loyalty is appropriate. Have a good attitude and take pride in your work. You'll feel a lot better about yourself and you'll do much better at work. Even if you're just mopping the floor, which is a very important job, do it well. And what if you just can't find a great job and want to strike out on your own and be your own boss? Great. I hope you've built up a great talent stack and lots of skills and a good network, and I hope you take pride in your work now because you'll need it when you're self-employed. Being your own boss is great, but it's got some pitfalls, so next week, on episode number 401, Ted and I will give you our thoughts on whether or not you should start your own business. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the like button, or if you don't like it, hit the don't like button. The YouTube algorithm looks at the likes and watches and subscriptions, and the more likes, the more this video will get shown to other people who can benefit from this channel. Please leave a comment or a question. And if you're listening to the audio version on a podcasting app like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting app, please subscribe so you automatically get each new podcast that I release every Saturday morning. Next week, episode number 401, Practical Advice on Starting Your Own Business. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was the special 400th episode of Debt-Free in 30.